Some pictures here. British Prime Minister Gordon Brown in Washington this week. He met not only with President Bush, Senators Clinton, Obama, and McCain, but also this morning with Fed Chairman Bernanke. We're not sure what exactly they're talking about, but when Bernanke makes a move, Squawk is the place to turn. Interesting. He's making the rounds on the Hill today. We heard some controversial comments minutes ago from Matt Simmons, who runs an investment firm specializing in the energy industry. He says record crude prices could actually stimulate our economy by raising wages for people who were exposed to the energy complex. That comes a day after oil broke that $115 level for the first time. Get some reaction this morning from Capitol Hill. Congressman Joe Barton is ranking member of the Energy and Commerce Committee. He is a Texas Republican, and he joins us today from Fort Worth. Congressman, good to have you back on the program.
Glad to be here.
You're in the sweet spot in a way. I wonder if you might agree with what Matt Simmons is saying. I mean, people are comparing Houston these days to Abu Dhabi. Is this going to be a net gain for the American economy?
Well, that's an unusual analysis, to say the least. If you're an average working family here in Arlington, Texas, that I represent, and you work in Dallas and your wife works in Fort Worth, you've seen your out-of-pocket cost for gasoline almost go up by 40 or 50 bucks a week if all you do is drive back and forth to work. That's not any recreational driving at all. That's a real cost, and it really impacts in a negative way the family budget. I do think high energy prices make the economy more efficient over time because you find a way to use less of that commodity, in this case all the derivatives of oil. But to somehow think that this is good for our economy and for the average working person just strains credulity in the world that I live in.
Yeah.
Because people are outraged, and they expect the government to put in an energy policy that does something to increase the supply, which Mrs. Pelosi and Mr. Reid are flat not doing. Their energy policy is to constrict the supply, and that's one reason the prices are higher right now.
Barton, it's Mike Holland. To that end, John McCain has proposed a cessation for a while of the federal tax on gasoline. Does that make any sense to you?
Well, it would help the pocketbook of the average worker, no question about that. But keep in mind that it's the federal gasoline tax that funds the Highway Trust Fund that builds and maintains the interstate highway system, and most highway construction projects in America that are state or federal get almost all their money from that trust fund. So in terms of a short-term help for average Americans' pocketbooks, what Senator McCain advocates would help, but in the longer term it would be difficult because it would deplete the Highway Trust Fund.
Yeah, I understand that, but I think he's only proposed it to go to the end of the summer, and I think most people viewing right now would welcome that. Does it have any chance of occurring?
I think if you took a poll of the voters, they would be about 90% in favor of it because of the short term, but maybe 95% because of the short-term benefit.
But Congressman, there are plenty of people who argue that that's sending the wrong message. You should be taxing it even more to try and keep people from relying too heavily on all of this energy. That's everyone from Boone Pickens to the other CEOs. Mike Jackson, the head of AutoNation, has said the same thing on our air.
Well, you know, it's an interesting, the people that have lots and lots of money seem to have a much better idea about what's good for the people that don't have lots and lots of money. And Boone Pickens is a good guy and a friend of mine, and I visit with him frequently on energy because he's one of the experts. But it'd be a lot better for working Americans if we could get oil prices back down to $60 or $70 a barrel and natural gas prices back down to $4 or $5 an MCF, and keep those jobs in America, not watch them go overseas. A higher energy price, the only thing it's helpful in is that it does provide a floor for alternative energy. Alternative energy projects are much more feasible the higher the base commodity energy price is. And people do learn to become more efficient. You don't drive as much. You get a car that gets more miles per gallon. you take one of these, you get one of these hybrids. But keep in mind, in Texas, while we're the #1 producer of energy, which is a plus for our economy when the prices are high, we're also the #1 consumer of energy.
Right.
You know,
So
Representative,
it's just as...
I'm sorry,
ahead,
Representative Barton. Lou Breen, you know, of all there's a lot of different factors, obviously, that go into the price of crude oil. One of the interesting ones over the last couple of years has been the weakness of the dollar. Whatever the reasons for that, I mean, if you were to take a chart of crude oil and a chart of the dollar versus the euro, they overlay on one another for the last year and a half almost exactly. So it seems to me that that situation, that macro or global situation, is something that, as long as the dollar remains the weak sister, it seems to me that until something changes, the crude oil will remain very high, no matter what we try here.
Well, that's where it would help if my friends in the Democrat Party that are running the show now would try to reduce spending and reduce the deficit. If you reduce the deficit, you don't have as many dollars that you've got to borrow, so you don't have to print as many dollars at the Fed and all of that. It's all interrelated. We have energy in America. We have billions of barrels of reserves and millions of barrels a day that could be produced, but we're choosing not to drill in Alaska. We're choosing not to even see what's off the various outer continental shelf coast. And so we're to somewhat a victim of our own grandiose ideas about conservation and global warming and all these environmental issues that make it almost impossible to bring on supply.
We'll keep it there. Great having you on the show. Thanks for getting up with us, Congressman Joe Barton of Texas, this morning. We invited the Democratic members of the Energy and Commerce Committee as well on the show. We were told no one was available due to scheduling issues.
Okay, and if you want to take a look very closely, the Pope is actually departing Washington, D.C.